Welcome back to Veterans of the North, empowering all who have served. I'm your host, Trent Dilks, and joining me again for the third segment is Stephen Butch Whitehead. Butch, welcome back.
Hey, thanks, Trent.
We just had a great conversation with Rich Batcho, a local DAV leader in Minnesota, about kind of the chapter activity, things like that, and what they've been able to do with the outdoors. And what it really made me think of, and what I'd like to start our conversation in the third segment is all the different organizations that are doing this, right?
Right.
You've been around longer than I have. You've seen them pop up. You've seen them fall down, things like that. Have you noticed any sort of trends in them or things like that?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things I'm seeing, Trent, is, there's over 200,000 veterans here in the state of Minnesota. Obviously there's a need. We know that. But when you have organizations that aren't looking at the true mission of what they're doing it versus bringing in their personal likes, I see that as a trend, right? When people are like, well, I love this to do this goose hunt, and I'm going to take veterans because that's what I would love to do. Well, they dwindle down really quickly because they're focusing only on one event,
and then they form a nonprofit.
Right.
That's the part that gets me. It's not just that they're a veteran who wants other veterans to hunt. Let's use goose hunt. Then they become Vets for Geese. Nonprofit. It's relatively easy to incorporate a nonprofit, and we see them in varying degrees of quality, right? It's not saying anything about the person who's passionate about it. They have a true belief in it, but all of a sudden, they're now, I bet there are 40 different veteran outdoors just in Minnesota.
Oh, at least, if not more.
And not including the ones who just kind of wrap them in as an also for their missions. And it becomes hard, right? You've run the foundation, you've run the department. It becomes hard for funders to tell the difference.
It really, because you have to try to separate yourself versus them and be professional about it, right? Because the last thing I want to do is be non-professional, put somebody down like we're better than them, we're just great. I do want people to know how proud I am what we do. I'm not here to put anybody else down, but when you have the program like we do, you got to have the measurable outcomes.
Yes, measurables.
Be able to tell that story, but also show the facts. And I think that's what separates a lot of the organizations that are doing really well versus some that are just hanging on.
Yeah.
Because you got to have the measurables.
Yeah, and we're not trying to break anybody down, but one of the things, and working in the nonprofit net world now for over a decade, that I have thought about is, and you have to think about, is donors, right? And I think what you just hit on, measurables is the key. If you're out there and you're thinking, ooh, you know what, I've just listened to this brilliant podcast, one of the best I've ever heard, with the best host I've ever heard, and now I want to get involved in outdoors, I think the thing to look out for is the organization you're about to support measuring the impact they have?
Because at the end of the day, there's so many different things you should be measuring. Isn't it if the veteran went out and had a great time at the event?
Yeah.
Okay, well, obviously that's a success by itself, but what was the outcome afterwards? Did we improve that veteran's quality of life? Did the veteran get something out of it other than the event itself? And finding that information out and then putting that down on paper, so if there's areas that we need to improve on, we need to address that.
It is sending somebody out to the story I shared, I think in our first segment, sending somebody out to Olympic National Park. Is it having that impact after they come home?
Right.
We know it is. We followed up with the veterans who have been doing it. We know it is. And I think then that creates the data. The fact that I can tell you 6 out of 7 who went to Glacier had never been on anything before, right? That's telling you we're not frequent flyers.
Right.
We're not bringing the same. We haven't become a good old boys club. Anybody in the military knows that happens. And so I think that's another key question to ask of any, event-based organization or organization that has an event is, how many unique veterans have you served?
And then, like you just hit a key thing there, Trent, is following up with the veteran afterwards. Isn't as if we take that veteran back to the car at the end and say, all right, thanks, great meeting you, see you later, bye. We got to stay connected with those veterans. And then how we do that is also how we communicate these events. We're trying to do the best we can when it comes to sharing what's going on while we're doing it, but highlighting it via social media, e-news, local paper, like we just heard in segment 2, it lets that veteran also to share that with their friends. And you can see the trend because these veterans that are participating in it aren't just sharing our story. They're going on their own platform and sharing it.
One of the women veterans who was on the trip I was on here, she found out from another woman who was out in Olympic, and she is not connected in any way with any service organization. Word of mouth. And now she shared it with her network, and she has several friends who will be waiting by their computers for our next opportunity to hike to open up. Like it has this interconnectedness that I think can't be overstated.
Sure, I didn't share with you. You shared these posts, and one of the gentlemen that you served with while you were in the military, he ended up calling me on Monday because he was driving through the Glacier National Park. And it just triggered that, hey, I'm driving through the area that Specialist Dilks was in. And he had to call me because just that correlation, because of what you share that story, it brought back all these memories.
Yeah. It's great. It is. And I'm going to pivot a little bit to something else we touched on a little bit in segment 1, but it's a pet peeve of mine. And that is the quasi-mental health events. These drive me absolutely nuts. And let me tell you why. They sell themselves as something that's going to help veterans with trauma, right? And they're often not run by mental health professionals.
Right.
They're often not having an aftercare plan for the veterans. So they'll take them for 2-3 days. They'll rip these wounds open. Ones that, whether it's a healthy way or an unhealthy way, veterans have found a way to, at least get through their day. They'll take them for 2-3 days in an unhealthy, unprofessional way. They'll rip these Band-Aids off that they've been surviving with. And then what do? They turn them loose.
Right.
These drive me absolutely nuts. I think our listeners, both of them, should be very careful about how, these things are presented and what quality they are. If you're a veteran out there who's struggling, absolutely seek help. But I think a lot of these quasi-mental health, outdoor BS, I think they're doing more harm than good, even though the organizers are well-intentioned.
Right.
I know that. But at the end of the day, they're creating harm.
And I think, Trent, you hit a very key point there. I think listeners, hopefully we're up maybe 4 now. That's the third segment.
That's true. That's true.
That when, especially the donors that are out there that, are constantly getting solicited by all these different great programs, right? They don't know how to separate it. But understanding what the outcomes are. So when you are getting these solicitations to be sponsor of this event, things like that, asking those tough questions to that person is because I think what you just said is we have to be careful. And I think what's really unique and very great about the DAV Minnesota is we don't highlight our programs as being, the one that's going to fix all.
Yeah.
But there's programs out there that do that. They use that language. And as you said, they're not trained professions when it comes to it. They might be trained or be a professional angler or a professional hunter and things like that. But I will not have our organization try to say we're professional in something, especially when it comes to mental health. And what's so unique about our programs is if we have things like that come up, we want to make sure that we're connecting that veteran
to
with
the
professional at the end. And that's that whole following through at the end, right? Not just dropping that veteran off back at their vehicle or with their family, is ensuring that the veteran, when they're leaving, hey, remember what we talked about? You have some stuff going on. Here's where you need to go.
Yes.
And then follow up.
And follow up. And that's buddy care, right? That's buddy care. That is different.
First level.
And that is triage. That's buddy care. That's what we should all be striving to do for our fellow veterans.
Absolutely.
And when you oversell that, or you use it as a selling point to try to generate support for your events, it drives me nuts. It's dangerous. You and I have both served as mentors down in Arizona at a PTSD kind of program. And that one starts with a week long, right? Where they do intensive professional things to help them start to access their trauma, stuff like this. The aftercare is a year and then unlimited after that, right? A year structured.
Absolutely.
And then now there's an example of a high quality program that knows what they're doing versus I'm going to take you for 3 days. We're going to cry around a campfire. We're going to pet some horses and then good luck on Monday. I hope you're able to make it through next week.
I hope you know who you need to call, to help you get through this.
Those scare me. I don't like it. And I think it's something that all 4 of we're going to go with 4 listeners now. We don't have the statistics to back that up, but we're going to go with 4 listeners should know and be aware of that. I think that's dangerous. As we look at the outdoors and we look at, how you've developed your program over the last 10 plus years. There's been this expansion into there's the sea kayaking,
Yep.
there's accessible outdoors, working with other organizations to keep it veteran specific, but people who have professional experience with accessible outdoors for disability, the trips to Olympic, things like that. As you look into your crystal ball, as somebody who's been so connected in the veterans world, what does the next decade of veterans outdoors look like?
I think the big thing that I'm seeing right now is, what we did a couple years, 18 months ago as a survey, continuing to do the surveys because veterans' needs are going to change over time.
Yeah.
And I want to make sure that I try to get out in front of those to be prepared for some of those changes, but also hearing from these veterans what their needs are. I think one of the biggest things that I'm proud of that the DAV Minnesota has partnered with Wilderness and Query when it comes to some specific women veterans events that these women veterans can go out just with women veterans, right? We sponsor it. They go out. It's not because we're trying to provide them a certain treatment program or things like that, but they can connect with other female veterans doing things like that. And I think the other one, Trent, that we're really going to try to focus on, and that is how do we get some of these family trips?
Yeah, absolutely.
Finding out what a family considers to be outdoors. That's going to be a little bit more challenging because it all depends on the age of the kids, capabilities of how far these things. But that's really where I see the DAV in Minnesota really trying to navigate to. But the bigger thing is I'm not become stagnant. I'm going to adjust the program to meet what the need is, what we're currently dealing with, and then try to get out in front of it.
I worked for McDonald's for 3 glorious weeks before my first deployment overseas, and I remember their training video. It said, if you're green, you're growing. When you ripen, you're rotten.
Yep.
And that is, you have to constantly be adapting. You have to constantly be changing and finding new ways. And it sounds like you think that's kind of the
I think
path
that's
forward.
that has to be our path, because at the end of the day, as we talk about, these programs aren't cheap, right?
Yeah.
And as I'm out there soliciting, talking to donors to help maybe provide some funds so we can continue to do this, it's important that I'm able to connect with them saying, oh, by the way, here's some of the changes that we're looking at and why it's important that you're doing this.
And I think as I kind of look at it, and I've been, on the outskirts, but I was able to help build the Wilderness Inquiry thing and stuff like that for the organization. I think one of the areas we need to look at is healthy community, right? Right now, it's great if you have kind of the big events and things like that. And we kind of send the veterans back. We see great impacts where they're going outdoors with their family, they're golfing with their family, they're hiking, things like that. But I feel like, especially as a veteran who I'm no longer interested in bars.
Yep.
I'm no longer interested in that lifestyle. I've got kids. Finding ways to socialize around the outdoors. Right. And that doesn't have to be paying for it and structuring it. It can be providing the access point for like-minded. I know there are other veterans next Saturday when I have nothing to do that would like to join me up on the North Shore for a day hike.
Yep.
I don't know where to find them.
Right. And I think what you said there, Trent, is something that we need to figure out. It goes back to what segment 2 you talked about is how do you find these veterans? And that's something that we need to continue to evolve and think on, because we got to find these families, the new families, right?
Yeah.
You're in the military, you're a family, right? But as soon as you take off that uniform, your family's gone.
Yeah.
Right? You have your immediate family, the ones that, your blood family and stuff like that. But when I'm talking about family, I'm talking about your veteran family now. Service member, service family, now it's a veteran family. And I'll tell you, one of the struggles we have here in Minnesota particularly that I just wish there was a magic switch that we could find, and that is, hey, in this town of Austin where we're at right now, Trent, there is 4,600 and some odd veterans, and here's where their likes are. How do we crack that, and how do we get them to connect with each other?
And I think you're right. We have to start to build new access points.
Right.
It can't just be the local bar, the traditional club. Those can't be the only places I go and find veterans.
Right.
I had talked with some of our attendees out to Glacier, and one of the things we had discussed was, what if this was a culminating event? What if you got together with a group of veterans 6 months ago and you started, some of them were interested in photography. What if there was an opportunity to get an outdoor photographer in, go on a little day hike, learn some of the next level of photography, and then what if you stayed connected as an alumni? What if you had even just as simple as a message board so that I could say, hey, next Saturday, I got 3 seats open going to the North Shore. Anybody interested, right? I can't walk into the local bar and say that. I'm not going to find the hikers.
Right.
I'm not connected with enough veterans, but I want to find ways to have that healthy lifestyle, that healthy connection.
Trying to think back, I think it was, I can't tell how many years ago it was, but I think you took part in an event up in Duluth doing some blacksmithing,
Yeah.
doing some stuff. If we were thinking back then about how to do this, that could have been a great networking tool there, is staying connected with these veterans that you went through a class with to learn how to do a little blacksmithing. But then how do we stay connected? So we need to figure out that follow on connecting.
And I think that as we look at the future, and that's kind of how I was wrapping that
Right.
around, is we have to continue to find the access points. I think chapters can serve as that as well, especially, because we're not tied to some of the more traditional ways that things are done. But finding ways to create that. If you're a veteran who is not interested in the bar scene, we had a couple of veterans who were recovering alcoholics on our trip. Not a problem. It was not built around alcohol. That was
Right.
not a part of it. How can we make them feel comfortable and access the community that we know saves veterans' lives? If we can connect veterans with veterans, they kill themselves less.
Yep. I think, Trent, help kind of wrap up my view on this as well. I think what I've been stressing, and we had that in segment 2, why I wanted, a chapter on here, is I need to learn more about what chapters are doing locally, because at the end of the day, we can share that on a bigger platform so more veterans are hearing about it, because at the end of the day, somebody may be connected at the department level or at the state level, maybe not connected at the local level because of they don't go to bars, they don't go hang out with that clientele, but they're maybe intrigued in that. So biggest thing is getting people like Rich and what the chapter is doing, share that with me, because I can't take care of all the outdoor events.
And as an organization, I know we share other organizations'
Absolutely.
events as well. We're not territorial.
No.
If you're doing this well, we'll do it with you. We'll help you do it.
Right.
We've had our foundation has funded other outdoor programs
Yep.
that are doing it well measurably. So
Right.
yeah, absolutely.
I love that, Trent.
It's not territorial. I'm excited. I'm always excited when I come back from these big trips. I'm so glad that we touched on this topic. It changes veterans' lives. Anytime I talk in front of a group, and I'm going to close with this here, is getting veterans outdoors is therapeutic.
Mm-hmm.
Watching the decompression that veterans have as they surround themselves with people with shared experiences is therapeutic. We don't need to add to that. We don't need additional layers. We just need to get veterans outside, whether it's hunting, fishing, hiking, whatever it may be. Get your ass outside.
Trent, my closing comment there is just to let veterans know, we understand you maybe have some type of disability, right? And that is hard to process, hard to deal with. But talk to your doctor. Find out what your doctor says you can or can't do, and go try to do things, right? Sitting in the house thinking about, well, I can't do this anymore. I can't. If you always think about the negative in your life, you'll never heal.
Yeah.
These outdoor events that we do, getting yourself out of that house into the things will help you heal.
Yeah. I was just out in Colorado. I went up my first 14,000 plus foot mountain. I was out there, and it reminded me, and what you just said reminded me, do hard things.
Right.
We get soft. We stop pushing ourselves. We start to self-impose limits.
Right.
Do hard things. And I agree with you completely. I'm so grateful that you're on today. We were able to talk about the outdoors. To see all the podcasts, listen to all our podcasts, or view them, you're going to want to go to davmn.org/podcast, davmn.org/podcast. Thank you again to Butch Whitehead for being here. This is Veterans of the North, empowering all who have served.